The Alaskan wilderness stretched endlessly in every direction. A sea of white ice and snow glistened beneath the pale sunlight, rolling out like an unbroken ocean frozen in time. To most, it looked empty, cold, and lifeless. But to Parker Schnabel, it was alive with possibility. Every gust of wind seemed to whisper secrets from the past, and every crack in the ice hinted at mysteries buried deep below. It was here, in this unforgiving landscape, that Parker's eyes caught something that defied explanation. Far across the frozen expanse, he noticed a scar cutting through the glacier, a jagged line so precise it couldn't have been shaped by nature alone. It was as if someone, long ago, had carved into the ice with purpose. Parker stood still, staring, his heart racing. He had seen gold veins and mining scars in his life, but never something like this. It was too deliberate, too exact. His instincts told him at once this was no accident. As Parker studied the strange fissure, a thrill coursed through him. Treasure hunters often talk about a feeling, a tingle in the air, a sense in the gut that whispers when something extraordinary is close. For Parker, that tingle was stronger than ever. He knew deep down that this crack in the glacier was more than just a fracture of ice. It was a doorway, a gateway to secrets lost for over a century. What he would uncover inside would not only lead to unimaginable wealth, but would also challenge everything people thought they knew about Alaska's gold rush history. Hidden beneath the glacier was a story that had been locked away by time. A story of secret networks, hidden vaults, and fortunes deliberately concealed from the world. The first clues came not from the ground itself, but from above. Satellite images revealed something strange, a geometric depression carved across the glacier's surface. To trained eyes, it looked nothing like the random cracks and curves that ice normally formed. When thermal scans were added, faint heat signatures appeared far beneath the ice, like whispers of hidden chambers untouched for centuries. These readings showed voids and hollow spaces where nothing should exist. For most analysts, it meant little. But for Parker, it was enough to spark a fire of determination. His experience in mining and history told him that people in the 1800s often went to great lengths to hide their riches. What if this was one of those places? What if an entire forgotten operation was buried here? Digging into old archives, Parker's suspicions grew stronger. Buried in dusty documents were mentions of secret mining operations during the late 19th century, operations so shadowy and discreet that few outside the circle of miners even knew they existed. These references spoke of vaults, stashes of gold, gemstones, and artifacts hurriedly hidden during the gold rush panic of 1893. At the time, chaos had reigned. Fortunes were being made and stolen, and paranoia drove many to conceal their wealth in places where no one could find it. Parker realized the fissure in the ice could be the entrance to one of these secret sites. Modern tools gave him an advantage that the miners of old could never have imagined. Using drones equipped with LiDAR and infrared sensors, Parker scanned every inch of the glacier. What came back confirmed his instincts. The machines detected faint metallic reflections beneath the ice, as if something solid and unnatural was frozen below. Air pockets and partially collapsed sections hinted at hidden spaces carved by human hands. For Parker and his team, it was the kind of discovery that makes the pulse quicken and the imagination run wild. They knew they had to go in. But the glacier was no ordinary place to explore. Glaciologists warned that the ice was unstable. It could shift without warning, swallowing men whole. Crevices opened like trapdoors, and walls of ice could collapse with thunderous force in the blink of an eye. Still, Parker wasn't one to turn back when danger stood in his way. He assembled a team built for the impossible: mountaineers, engineers, and spelunkers who understood how to move safely in such a treacherous environment. With thermal suits, ropes, crampons, and reinforced gear, they prepared themselves for a descent into the glacier shaft that promised either incredible reward or devastating peril. When the first steps were taken into the shaft, the atmosphere was electric.
The walls of the glacier glistened like glass, shimmering with veins of frozen minerals that sparkled under their lights. Embedded in the ice were wooden beams, still intact after more than a century. These timbers were proof, clear evidence that human hands had been here before, cutting deep into the glacier to create something lasting. The air was sharp and metallic, a reminder that what they were about to uncover was not just nature's work, but history's. Every sound echoed through the cavern as if the glacier itself were alive, groaning under its own immense weight. The deeper they went, the more they realized this was no ordinary discovery. Etched on the walls of ice and stone were carvings, cryptic symbols, initials, and dates. They seemed random at first, but as Parker studied them, a pattern began to emerge. Later, historians would confirm that these markings were codes used by secret societies and gold shipment networks during the Klondike Gold Rush. To find such symbols here was a revelation. It meant this glacier shaft wasn't just a hiding spot. It was part of a larger web of secrecy, carefully designed to keep outsiders away. The realization sent chills through the crew, and not just from the freezing air. Then came the first true treasure. As their light scanned the frozen walls, they spotted a shape trapped in the ice. With careful work, they chipped away until a wooden crate emerged. Its surface was battered but intact. When they pried it open, the glow of gold greeted them. Inside were nuggets, silver ingots, and tools from the late 1800s preserved as if time had stood still. Alongside the wealth was something even more valuable. A parchment, brittle and fragile, but still legible. On it was a coded map signed by Tobias Hargrove, a miner whispered about in historical footnotes as a man who operated in secrecy during Alaska's boom. This was no coincidence. This was proof that the fissure had led them to one of the lost caches. Metallurgists and historians later studied the artifacts and confirmed their authenticity. Some of the alloys were unusual. Some coins bore rare mint marks, and there were hints of European trade connections that had never been documented before. Parker and his crew were no longer just explorers. They were guardians of a historical discovery. And yet, this was only the beginning.
The results left everyone stunned. The glacier wasn't just riddled with random cavities, it was laid out like a maze, complete with false turns, dead ends, and chambers that appeared carefully concealed. It was as if the glacier itself had been turned into a fortress meant to guard something priceless. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what the team suspected. There were structures frozen inside, not just crates, but beams, supports, and even tools embedded in the walls. At times, miniature robots had to be sent into cracks too narrow for people to enter. These tiny machines crawled through the ice and returned with coins, rusted equipment, and even small ingots of precious metal. Each discovery was a mix of exhilaration and dread. The more they found, the clearer it became that this labyrinth wasn't accidental. It was the result of deliberate design, a network built to hide something vast. The tension grew heavier with each step. Sensors strapped to the walls constantly measured pressure shifts, and the numbers flickered warnings again and again. Cracks could be heard in the distance, sharp snaps that echoed like gunshots. Ice shifted underfoot with a low rumble, reminding everyone how fragile their position truly was. The timber beams holding parts of the tunnels together were over a century old, some splintered and weak. At any moment, the structure could collapse. Still, Parker pressed on, driven by the realization that every relic, every carving, every glint of metal was pointing them further into the glacier's heart. Among the fragments they uncovered were journals, their leather covers stiff with age, but miraculously preserved by the sub-zero cold. Inside, faded ink revealed lists of transactions, names of financiers, and codes referencing secret stashes. These were not the writings of ordinary miners. They hinted at powerful connections, alliances between wealthy backers, and networks of secrecy that stretched far beyond Alaska. Each page was like a whisper from the past, telling stories of ambition, greed, and hidden riches. Parker and his crew began to piece together the puzzle. This was not simply a gold cache,
but the legacy of an entire hidden operation. The deeper they went, the more organized everything became. Carvings on the walls weren't random, they formed a breadcrumb trail, leading further into the ice. And then, after hours of navigating the twisting labyrinth, the team stumbled upon something extraordinary. The icy walls gave way to solid granite. Before them stood a chamber carved with precision, its surfaces smoothed and reinforced as if constructed by master builders rather than desperate miners. The scale of the work was astonishing. For a moment, everyone fell silent, overwhelmed by the realization that this chamber had been deliberately engineered more than 100 years ago, hidden so deeply within the glacier that only someone with a map or foreknowledge could ever hope to find it. Inside the chamber, treasures glittered under the dim glow of headlamps. Gold bars stacked carefully in rows, gemstones scattered in pouches, silver coins lying in neat piles. Manuscripts lay undisturbed on stone tables, their ink still dark and legible. Locks, chains, and mechanical devices guarded sections of the room as though daring intruders to try their luck. Etched into the walls were warnings written in Latin and symbols from secret societies of the era. Some read like guidance, others like curses, cautioning that betrayal or greed would bring eternal punishment. For Parker and his team, the message was clear. This was not just a treasure vault, but a shrine to secrecy. Historians later valued this chamber's contents at $20 to $25 million. But beyond the financial worth was its historical weight. Every artifact, every coin, every parchment was a piece of a story long buried. Some manuscripts revealed coordinates to other hidden chambers, notes on Glacier's stability, and coded instructions pointing to even larger caches. It became evident that this vault was not the end, but merely one piece of a much bigger network carefully designed to last through the ages. The craftsmanship of the vault astounded even the scientists who studied it. Ventilation shafts had been cut with precision, allowing the chamber to remain stable for over a century. Reinforcements had been built into the stone walls, designed with knowledge of glacial pressure that was far ahead of its time. Some of the symbols carved into the chamber's walls matched those found at other treasure sites around the world, sparking theories of international connections. Could this be the work of a secret society that spanned continents? Or had wealthy European investors hidden their fortunes here, far from political turmoil in their own countries? But the glacier was not finished testing them. As they prepared to explore deeper, tremors shook the tunnels. Cracks thundered through the ice, and chunks broke free, smashing down into the passageways with terrifying speed. Parker's voice echoed sharply through the cavern as he ordered the crew to halt and retreat. Ropes strained, gear clattered, and the team scrambled for safety as the glacier groaned like a living thing. Above them, an avalanche tore loose, a deafening roar that sent snow and ice crashing down in waves. Inside the tunnels, shards of frozen blue glass rained down from the walls. In those moments, survival was all that mattered. When the chaos settled, exhaustion washed over the crew. But turning back was not an option. The treasure they had already uncovered proved that more was hidden further in, and Parker's instincts told them they were close to something even greater. As they pressed forward, suddenly meltwater surged into the tunnels. Hidden streams from within the glacier had broken loose, flooding the passageways with icy torrents. The water rose quickly, threatening both the explorers and the fragile artifacts they were uncovering. Tools sputtered in the cold, heaters failed, and lights flickered as the team fought to keep their equipment alive. Improvisation became their greatest ally. Ice picks were repurposed, torches warmed frozen wires, and sheer determination kept the mission alive. Stress weighed heavily on every member of the crew. The cold gnawed at their bones, fatigue blurred their focus, and arguments flared as decisions grew harder with
every step. Yet beneath it all, a shared sense of purpose kept them united. They weren't just chasing wealth, they were uncovering history. And then, just as hope and fear collided in equal measure, they found it. Ahead of them loomed a massive, ice-encased vault, larger than anything they had yet discovered. Reinforced with timber and fitted with complex mechanical locks, it glowed faintly beneath layers of frost. Chipping away at the barriers,
The team finally revealed its contents, and what lay inside stunned them into silence. Inside the vault was a sight that words could barely capture. As the last of the frost chipped away and the beams gave in to the team's tools, headlamps illuminated rows upon rows of gold bars. They gleamed with a dull brilliance, stacked with meticulous care, as if the miners who hid them had known their work would be seen one day. Beside the gold were artifacts encrusted with jewels, ornaments that sparkled under the light, their diamonds and gemstones scattering shards of rainbow color across the frozen walls. Coins of every shape and origin lay scattered in neat heaps, some marked with European mint stamps long forgotten by time. There were even manuscripts, their pages stiff but astonishingly well preserved, each one filled with the careful handwriting of men who had lived and worked in secrecy. The team stood in silence, their breath clouding in the frigid air. They had just stepped into a hidden world, a place where the ambitions of long-dead financiers, miners, and perhaps secret societies still lingered. Every item was a message from the past, a reminder that this vault was not just a storage room. It was a deliberate effort to lock away wealth and knowledge for generations. Early estimates placed the value of this second vault at another $50 to $60 million. Combined with what they had already found, the treasure was staggering. Yet the financial worth was only part of the story. The ledgers and documents hinted at networks of secret funding, hidden partnerships, and coded agreements. These were clues pointing to a broader story, one that stretched across continents. But the Glacier was relentless. The team had barely begun cataloging the vault's contents when the ice reminded them who was in charge. Sudden tremors shook the chamber, sending cracks racing across the ceiling like lightning. Chunks of frozen stone sheared off the walls and slammed into the floor, forcing the team to dive for cover. Parker's orders cut through the chaos with sharp precision. Ropes were secured, gear was pulled back, and movements became a carefully choreographed dance between survival and preservation. Outside, the sound of another avalanche echoed like distant thunder. Moving the treasure was no simple task. Cranes had to be lowered into the shafts, their steel arms swaying dangerously in the cold wind as they hooked on to wooden crates filled with gold. Helicopters hovered above, their blades chopping the icy air as mechanical slings carried treasure upward. Each lift was a gamble. A single miscalculation, a rope fraying, a hook slipping, could bring disaster, burying both men and treasure beneath collapsing ice. Engineers and historians worked side by side, guiding every movement with hushed voices over headsets. The work was delicate, exhausting, and unrelenting. Even as they pulled the crates free, the Glacier fought back. Ice groaned like a living giant, threatening to close its grip around the vault. Hidden crevices yawned beneath their feet, ready to swallow anything that strayed too close. At times, sudden bursts of meltwater surged from unseen channels, flooding the tunnels and forcing quick evacuations. Improvisation became the crew's constant companion. Ropes were shifted, anchors reset, equipment repaired on the fly with whatever tools they had on hand. The thin line between triumph and catastrophe was always present. Still, Parker pressed forward. He had come too far to turn back. Each crate that emerged from the depths was a victory, a reminder of why they had taken this risk. Cameras recorded the tension, the near misses, the heroic saves, the sight of gold bars gleaming in the faint light as they were lifted into the open air. Viewers would later call it cinematic, but for the crew, it was raw survival mixed with awe. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, and the Glacier seemed determined to test every ounce of their resolve. Then came the moment that would crown the expedition. Beyond the second vault, hidden behind what looked like a solid ice wall, Parker and his team discovered something astonishing. A concealed compartment, small yet ornate, revealed itself after careful probing. At first, they thought it might be another dead end. But as they chipped away at the ice, the truth emerged. This was no ordinary cache. The chamber was carved with care, its walls etched with intricate designs and cryptic warnings. Unlike the larger vaults, this one felt personal, almost ceremonial, as though it had been created to protect something beyond mere gold. Inside, the air was thick and heavy, as if it had been sealed for centuries. The treasures within were breathtaking. Gold-encrusted chests gleamed under the glow of the lamps, their surfaces adorned with patterns too fine to be the work of ordinary miners. Stacks of coins, some minted in Europe, lay untouched by time, their edges still sharp. Gemstones, diamonds, rubies, sapphires, sparkled brilliantly, casting prisms of light across the chamber. Fragile manuscripts lay bundled in leather, their wax seals still intact, holding secrets of financiers, explorers, and hidden networks. One inscription carved into the wall sent shivers down Parker's spine. It read, "Fortune favors the brave, but betrayal costs eternity." The words echoed in the chamber like a haunting reminder of the risks taken by those who had built this hidden empire. Historians would later argue over its meaning. Was it a warning left for anyone who dared to disturb the vault? Or was it a message to the very men who created it, reminding them of the consequences of betrayal? Alongside the text were more symbols, some identical to those found in old European archives, strengthening theories that secret societies had a hand in this operation. Verification of the find was meticulous. Coins were cross-checked with mint records, gemstones were analyzed for origin, and manuscripts were examined by experts who confirmed their authenticity. Every test proved what Parker already knew. This discovery was real, and it was unlike anything the world had seen before. The value of this chamber was estimated in the tens of millions of dollars, but historians agreed that its cultural and historical worth could not be measured in money alone. By now, the total value of the expedition's finds had reached $120 million. Word spread quickly, and what had started as a quiet mission became an international sensation. Journalists, treasure hunters, and historians flocked to Alaska, each hoping for a glimpse of the treasure that had been hidden for 100 years. The Glacier, once silent and remote, was now the center of global intrigue. For Parker and his crew, the moment was surreal. They had risked their lives to bring this story to light, and in doing so, they had become part of history themselves. Every gold bar, every artifact, every document was more than just a piece of wealth. It was a fragment of a larger puzzle, a testament to human ambition, secrecy, and endurance. The world reacted with shock and
fascination as the scale of the discovery became clear. News outlets across the globe scrambled to cover the story, their headlines flashing phrases like "Glacier gold worth $120 million unearthed in Alaska" and "Secret vault hidden for over a century finally revealed." Television crews set up camp at the site, their cameras pointed at the frozen peaks as if the mountain itself were a celebrity. Reporters shouted questions, drones hovered overhead, and helicopters buzzed like insects against the backdrop of the silent ancient ice. But the discovery brought more than media attention. Governments and corporations quickly became interested. Questions of ownership arose almost immediately. Who did the treasure belong to? The miners who had hidden it were long gone. Their families, scattered across generations, had little evidence to claim it. Did it belong to the state of Alaska since it was found on its soil? Or did it fall under federal jurisdiction as part of U.S. heritage? Lawyers, politicians, and representatives from various organizations descended on the site, each with arguments and documents in hand.
What had once been a story of exploration now became a storm of legal battles and negotiations. Parker found himself caught in the middle. On one side, he was hailed as a hero, the modern-day explorer who had risked his life to uncover a hidden chapter of history.